The political parties of Saint Kitts and Nevis closed their electoral campaigns for the early general elections to be held on Friday. China's foreign ministry announced unspecified sanctions on the U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and her immediate family following her visit to Taiwan earlier this week. And the Iraqi Shiite cleric Muqtada Sadr called for traditional Friday prayers, where his followers are occupying the parliament for the 7th consecutive day. From the headquarters of TeleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada, and these are the news. The political parties of Saint Kitts and Nevis closed their electoral campaigns for the early elections to be held on Friday. The different parties carried out their last campaign events in the Caribbean island. The elections will take place 3 years before the constitutional deadline because the Prime Minister, Timothy Harris, was forced to dissolve the parliament last May 10th after his partners in the coalition government presented a motion of no confidence. Meanwhile, in order to guarantee the normal developments of the elections, a mission of observers from the Caribbean community, CARICOM, arrived on Thursday in Basseterre, the capital of the country. In Chile, after 2 years of closure due to the COVID-19 pandemic, Easter Island reopened its doors to tourists. With traditional dances and flowers necklaces, the inhabitants of Rapa Nui, a Chilean island territory in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, received Thursday the first flight with tourists. 228 passengers arrived in a commercial plane on the Chilean-Brazilian airline LATAM. The flight landed after noon at Mataveri Airport in Hangarboa, the capital of the Easter Island, more than 2 years after a flight with tourists landed in March 2020, where a strict closure was imposed due to the pandemic of coronavirus.
This is to our guests. You can come to Rapa Nui. Rapa Nui is the largest open-air museum in the world. You can come here since capacity is not a problem in Rapa Nui. You can come following the established protocols, and Rapa Nui will welcome you with much affection.
On Thursday, a team of Peruvian archaeologists found 3 burials from the Spanish colonial period on top of a pre-Hispanic temple which may be up to 500 years old. According to Lucenida Carrion, the head of the Archaeological Directorate of the Park of Legends, the remains will belong to a colonial cemetery. The temple or pre-Hispanic sanctuary known as Tres Palos, where the supposed burial site is located, is more than 1,000 years old and is located on a plot of land adjacent to a zoo. During the Inca period in the 15th and the 16th centuries, the Tres Palos sanctuary was used as a tambo, the food deposit, and during the colonial period, adobe, mud and straw houses were built. Peru was almost 300 years under the Spanish rule from 1532, when it invaded and defeated the Inca Empire, until 1821, when the South American country became independent. And in Brazil, Guarani communities try to survive on land once taken from them and suffer on the impacts of exploitation. The community settles in a public land surrounded by rainforest north of Rio de Janeiro, where they will finally have drinking water and land to plant, but their land where set up their houses and school, seated by a business person, is degraded out of overexploitation that does not provide them with water or fertile soil for their crops. An estimated 280,000 Guarani indigenous people live in South America, spread among Brazil, Argentina, Bolivia, and Paraguay, according to the 2016 Continental Guarani Map, a report that brings together official and NGO data. Identified by their high mobility and agricultural skills, these groups continue to be at the center of conflicts with the farmers over their land, from which in many cases they were displaced as a result of the economic expansion. Cuban Foreign Minister Bruno Rodriguez received his Serbian counterpart, Nikola Selakovic, in the framework of strengthening the ties between the two countries. During the meeting, Rodriguez highlighted the excellent development of bilateral ties and the prospect of continuing to advance diplomatic relations between Havana and Belgrade, which will celebrate their 120th anniversary on November 4th. The Cuban foreign minister also highlighted the possibility of visiting Serbia when possible, while Selakovic said that he will be received with the same hospitality. The Serbian foreign minister said that Serbia and Cuba have maintained a close friendship, even in very difficult times. We'll take a short break now. Join us again after this. Welcome back to From the South. China's foreign ministry on Friday announced unspecified sanctions on the U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and her immediate family following her visit to Taiwan earlier this week. According to a statement from the ministry, Pelosi disregarded China's concerns and the firm opposition to her visit. China didn't specify what the sanctions entailed, but previous measures have restricted individuals from entering China, Hong Kong, or Macau, or doing business there. However, such curbs are likely to be largely symbolic for the U.S. House Speaker. Pelosi, the second in line to the presidency, was the highest-ranking U.S. official to visit Taiwan in 25 years. And the military exercises with China started on Thursday continue around the island of Taiwan in response to the visit of the U.S. Congressperson Nancy Pelosi. The second phase of large-scale military drills continued on Friday and covered completely the island of Taiwan. The unprecedented drills feature advanced weapons, including long-range rocket artillery, anti-ship ballistic missiles, stealth fighter jets, and an aircraft carrier group with a nuclear-powered submarine. The exercises that plan to run through Sunday are not only of concern of Taipei from a military perspective, but also in other fields related to people's daily lives, such as power supply and flights on the island. Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida received U.S. House of Representatives Speaker Nancy Pelosi on Friday, who recalled close ties of cooperation between the U.S. and Japan, but criticized China for the missiles recently dropped in Japanese exclusive economic waters. After the meeting, Pelosi held a press conference where she told reporters in Tokyo on Friday that her visits to Asian countries, including Taiwan, was not aimed at changing the status quo in the region, but to promote peace. The remarks seek to justify what Beijing considers as a violation of the One China principle acknowledged by the United States and universally as a basic rule for international relations, which considered as a red line in the tense relationship between the powers. Meanwhile, U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi insisted that China will not isolate Taiwan by preventing U.S. officials from traveling there.
To that end, as you see, the Chinese made their strikes, probably using our visit as an excuse. Let me close by saying this. The Chinese have tried to isolate Taiwan.
South Korea's first lunar orbiter was launched on Thursday from the United States in a year-long mission to observe the moon. The Danuri orbiter, which name is acronym of the Korean words for moon and enjoy, is carried on a Falcon 9 rocket launched from the Cape Canaveral in Florida by the aerospace company SpaceX. Its goal is to reach the moon in mid-December, and among other missions, it will search for landing sites for future incursions to the moon. In the United States, Minnesota police responded on Thursday to a shooting at the Mall of America in suburban Minneapolis, sending choppers running from cover without any fatal victim reported yet. A video posted to social media showed that what appeared to be a showed it as he walked near the complex Nike store with at least 3 apparent gunshots. Another video showed the choppers fleeing the amusement park on the first floor of the giant mall, holding their children's hands and clutching their rags. Still another video showed a couple of police officers, including one with a rifle, moving through the mall and people hurrying away from the mall's large indoor atrium. Bloomington police said they were still searching for a suspect after securing the scene shortly before 6 p.m. The mall, which opened in 1992, is the largest in the U.S. and is a tourist destination and a community gathering spot. The foreign ministers of the Association of the Southeast Asian Nations reaffirmed their commitment to address common challenges and maintain momentum in building a regional community with a strong sense of unity. This was announced in a joint communique issued by the 55th meeting of foreign ministers of the ASEAN held in Phnom Penh, the capital of Cambodia. With the conflict in Ukraine and the tensions over Taiwan as a context, this Friday's forum brought together foreign ministers of the regional bloc, together with the foreign ministers of China, Wang Yi, Russia, Sergei Lavrov, and the Secretary of State of the United States, Anthony Blinken. And this Friday, the departure of 3 vessels carrying grain from Ukrainian ports was confirmed. The Joint Coordination Center in Istanbul approved the departure of the 3 ships loaded with 58,000 tons of Ukrainian grain for this August 5th. From the ports of Odessa and Chernomorsk, the body in charge of the inspection of the vessels informed. This after Russia, Turkey, and the UN signed an agreement on July 22nd that seeks to unblock the export of grain and fertilizers from Ukraine in the midst of the hostilities. Ukrainian government representatives signed a similar document with Ankara and the UN representatives. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan met with his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin on Friday in the Russian coastal city of Sochi for a day-long working visit. According to the Turkish presidency, Erdogan and Putin discussed regional and international issues, as well as Turkey-Russian relations. Issues such as the Syrian crisis and the conflict in Ukraine, now in its 6th month, were also on the table. Turkey, the UN, Russia, and Ukraine signed an agreement on July 22nd to reopen 3 Ukrainian ports for grain exports that have been stalled for months due to the outbreak of the military conflict. This is the second Erdogan-Putin in-person meeting in 17 days after their July meeting in Iran's capital, Tehran, where the two had a trilateral meeting with his Iranian counterpart Ebrahim Raisi during Astana former talks on Syria. And we have more news coming up after a final short break, so stay with us.
Repúblicas y provincias autónomas. De hecho,
welcome back to From the South. In a new bid to escalate the tensions in Iraq, Iraqi Shiite cleric Muqtada Sadr called for traditional Friday prayers to be held in a large square inside the Green Zone, where his followers are occupying parliament for the 7th consecutive day. The Green Zone refers to the safest area of Baghdad and the main point of the Western presence in the city. The call comes amid the tensions between his political bloc and a rival Shiite faction backed by Iran over the shape of the government. Muqtada Sadr, who leads a long-standing political and religious force in the war-torn country, won the most seats in last year's October elections, but an opposition coalition was formed that together managed to elect the prime minister. In view of the situation, Sadr demands early elections and the dissolution of the current parliament. On Thursday, Senegal's National Vote Counting Commission announced the preliminary results of the legislative elections, and the ruling coalition is expected to lose its majority in the Congress. According to the president of the commission, Siré Aliba, the coalition of the party of Senegalese President Macky Sall had the absolute majority with 125 seats. Meanwhile, Benobok Yakar, United for People and for Hope, has won 82 seats. Ranking third, the main opposition coalition Jewias Can We Free the People, led by opposition leader Ousmane Sonko, won 56 seats, and his coalition Wallu Senegal won 24 seats. With a total of 165 seats in the National Assembly, parliamentary groups need at least 83 seats to obtain an absolute majority, so no coalition has the necessary support in principle to form a new government. On Friday, Gaza Strip in Palestine saw a new Israeli bomb attack that left 4 people dead, including a jihadist commander. Gaza's health ministry reported 4 people were killed, among them a 5-year-old girl targeted by the Israeli occupation in the central Rimal neighborhood. Palestinians also mourn jihadist commander Taysir al-Jabari, better known as Abu Mahmoud. The strikes come 4 days after Israel closed its 2 border crossings with Gaza and restricted the movement of Israeli civilians living near the frontier, citing security concerns, and banned large gatherings in communities within 80 of the Gaza frontier until Saturday evening. The measures follow the arrest in the occupied West Bank of jihadist leader Bassem al-Sahari and another senior member of the Islamic Jihad. A 17-year-old member of the group was shot dead by Israeli forces during the raid. South Sudan's unit government announced a 2-year extension of the post-Civil War transitional period to end in 2023. The Government Affairs Minister Martinelli Lemuro announced to diplomats President Salva Kiir and the first Vice President Riek Machar on Thursday that after lengthy deliberations, the committee agreed to extend the transition period by 24 months. The authorities argued the meeting the electoral schedule in February 2023, as agreed, could generate a civil war. The end of the transitional period was scheduled for 2022 after several postponements, but it was pushed back to February 2023 due to the lack of progress on many provisions of the peace agreement that ended a bloody 5-year civil war between sworn enemies Riek Machar and Salva Kiir in 2018. The conflict had left nearly 400,000 people dead and millions displaced. And the failure of 4 consecutive rainy seasons in parts of Ethiopia, Kenya, and Somalia is posing the threat of starvation to communities in the Horn of Africa. The climate event has not been witnessed in at least 40 years and has left Somalia, southern and southeastern Ethiopia, and the northern and eastern Kenya facing prolonged drought, leading to increased human mobility. According to humanitarian relief agencies, at least 7 million livestock have died across the region, while UNICEF, the United Nations, the Fund for the Children, reported that over 7 million children are acutely malnourished due to a lack of access to sufficient food. Exacerbating the problem is that other regions in East Africa, like Burundi, have been experiencing severe flooding that are swallowing up towns and villages along the banks of the Great Lakes region.
Over 15 million people have been impacted on and require food assistance in the Horn of Africa. And if the rains continue to fail, as we are witnessing, it's projected that over 20 million people will be impacted on by the drought and require food assistance.
TeleSUR English continues to grow. Its signal now reaches Europe. You can order it from your cable dealer or tune it yourself. These parameters that you see on the screen are in place since July 1st. Quite soon, further changes will be implemented for the signals in the Middle East and Africa. Now, more than ever, the world connects to us and our stories are heard in other farther away nations. This news multi-platform will continue providing truthful content to oppose the hegemonic media's narrative and our faithfulness to our audience. So we have come to the end of this news brief. But remember, you can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also, if you feel so inclined, please join us on social media for all the latest